day, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the 10th Cross-Border Distribution Conference. It's always good to start with going back to memory lane. This event is a hybrid version. Half of the audience will actually participate via live streaming, and here's a couple of housekeeping matters for these colleagues who are not here in person. There's a Q&A icon on the right of your screen. Your questions will not show in public, so don't be scared of asking the panelists any sort of questions you may have. The moderators pick them up and select them thereafter. If there's any issues regarding sound or image, please inform the tech support team, and they make their utmost to get them fixed. We are very ESG compliant and as well conscious. I can assure you that the climatization is not switched off, and the temperatures should go down with the course of this event. Those who went through the program and skimmed through it will note that it is a very balanced and diversified program. Due to the geopolitical turmoil that we're currently in, we had to adapt it slightly in order to cover geopolitical issues as well. Of course, the regulatory matters, industry matters, the digitalization and diversification is at the core of the agenda, but always with the main focus on cross-border distribution. Well-balanced as well from a gender balance perspective, because you will note from the 34 speakers that we have 40% women. We're almost there. The objective for next year is to do better and strike the 50% threshold. 800 inscriptions to this event. 50% are on site. The other colleagues, as I said, follow this event online in 50 different countries with over 360 different companies attending. That leaves me to finish my introduction on, first of all, an excuse, and secondly, a thank you note. An excuse: Yuri Bender, the chief editor of the FT, is unfortunately not here. COVID reminded us that he's still amongst us. He got hit the day before yesterday by COVID and had to sadly pull out. I'm sure that Yuri will follow us online. He's being represented by Elizabeth Lumley, who will be your master of ceremony during the course of the day. Thank you, Node, and above all, thanks to my partners who supported, again, the organization of this event during the course of the day. Thank you to the ladies within our marketing communication department. They've been good, as always, to make this happen again. Thank you as well to the co-organizers, especially the FT. Helen Danze did a terrific job, as well as my two colleagues, partners within EHP, Jacques Elvinger and Jérôme Vigny. And lastly, thanks to our 8 sponsors, who are Morningstar, the Grove Peter Cam Asset Services, IFSAM, FE Funding for Topam, Calastone, Capital Group, and Khan. This event is all about you. Thank you for having turned up so numerous. Enjoy the day. And by these words, I hand over to my colleague, Jacques.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all those in the room. Good morning to all those attending from far. Thank you, Lou, for this introduction. I have to say that I'm very happy to see all those who are physically present. I think for me, at least, it is the first conference which I have been physically attending since the pandemic, and I'm sure there are some others in the room where it's the first time where they attend the conference physically again. I think it is different from the virtual events, and I look really forward to connecting with all of you during the day. As I have done in the past in an introduction, which I try to keep as short as possible, I would like to spend a few minutes on the regulatory agenda. The regulatory agenda is immense, and the corresponding action to be taken by the industry are really challenging. I think it is impossible in the introduction to go through the whole agenda, so I just wanted to mention a few items, selected items, which have arisen over the last 3 months. Not all of those may be of interest to everybody, but I'm sure that there is one or the other topic which will be of interest to one or the other. I think since the beginning of the year, we had on the 22nd of April, the CSF published a new circular on outsourcing arrangements, which is in fact applicable not only to the investment fund actors, but which is applicable to the financial sector actors globally, but it also applies to management company and AFMs. And I think for those actors, the challenge is really to understand which of the provisions of that circular apply to them in the context of different and older provisions which appear on outsourcing in CSF Circular 18698. So you will need to sort of try to navigate the two circulars to well understand which provisions are applicable in the circumstances. A second point, very sort of timely also in light of the panel which we will have later today, upon the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, a number of UCITS have fair valued Russian assets or suspended NAV calculations, and obviously also subscriptions and redemptions. Fairly rapidly thereafter, at the end of March, the CSF published a very helpful, frequently asked questions on the application of liquidity management tools in the context of the Ukrainian crisis. So the FAQ, frequently asked questions, describes a series of restructuring methods which permit, I would say, to segregate the non-impacted assets from the Russian assets with a possible objective to reopen the fund with those assets which are not impacted by the crisis. The CSF at the end of the FAQ mentioned that they reserve the right to revisit their position in light of European developments, and it is not later than yesterday that ESMA has published a public statement on the same subject. I think the good news is that it seems that nothing in this public statement seems to sort of challenge the different options which the CSF has described in their FAQ. Interestingly, just a little story, if you look at the CSF FAQ, they cautiously try to avoid the term side pockets when speaking about UCITS, whereas in the ESMA statement, they use the term of side pockets for UCITS without any reservation. Another topic, also very recent, the CSF published yesterday, a new circular on the authorization of fund administrators. This is a circular which has been awaited for some time. It replaces, in fact, the very old and outdated circular 9175. And so this circular will need to be looked at by all those actors which are involved in the administration of Luxembourg investment funds, and also to some extent foreign investment funds which are not located in Luxembourg. Many of the provisions of the circular reflect the CSF regulatory practice as it has evolved over the last years, but there are also some new provisions or requirements on backup storage, for example, reporting and delegation. I think probably the biggest impact of the circular is that it also applies to non-CSF regulated investment funds to the extent that they are administrated in Luxembourg. And then the last point which I wanted to mention, which I think is of particular interest to all those who act as board members on Luxembourg investment funds, is the publication by the CSF of the self-assessment questionnaires, which replace the former long-form report, where basically the board of directors of investment funds, so not only of the management companies, but as a separate action, the board of directors of the funds themselves will have to complete this self-assessment questionnaire, which has been published at the end of last month, so very recently. It is relatively difficult to access on the CSF website, therefore it remains still a little bit uncertain for some what the exact content is, but you will be confronted to it fairly rapidly, because it will be applicable for all funds from where the year-end closes after 30th of June this year. It is about 200 questions, and I think what is the most interesting in this document for fund board members is that it reflects fairly precisely what the CSSF expects board members to deal with during their board meetings. What is a typical board agenda, what are the procedures which need to be approved by the board as opposed to the management company. So in that respect, a very interesting document. Now, probably I'll stop there, but obviously I have not mentioned those topics which are coming and which are probably even more, certainly more demanding. We have the preparation for the MiFID ESG rules, which apply from 2nd of August 22. We'll talk about that during the panel discussions, and the SFDR RTS applicable from 1st of January 23. PRIPS kit from 1st of January 23. The AFMD report with still discussions about impact on delegation or not. Money market fund reform also in the pipeline. LTIF reform potentially later this year, and then AML 6 with the global AML package, which has been announced by the European Commission at the end of last year. So I've certainly missed one or the other topic, but I'm sure this will keep all of us very busy until the end of this year, and certainly even beyond. So thank you very much for your attention.